Hi there, this is Mary from the CE API SIG, and I am going to be walking you through our quarterly recap video. Navin will be doing the second half. He's my CE partner. So before understanding our direction with CE, it's probably good to have an understanding of what CE or collective experience actually is. So the core motivation behind CE is that users are often too busy to plan out social interactions. It takes time to coordinate a meeting with people, and it takes time to choose an activity. But users still want to have these social interactions despite not having time to plan them out. So current social media tries to bridge this no time crunch by having these fast interactions that you can have on the go. So you might be scrolling through Facebook and liking posts when you're in a coffee shop or something. But these interactions are often deeply unsatisfying because they're passive, meaning they don't have direct engagement with another person. So in the example of liking a Facebook post, you're not actively engaging with another person, and that can be unsatisfying. How does CE overcome this? So CE creates opportunistic collective experiences, and we can break that down to see how it overcomes no time for planning and passive engagements. So opportunistic, um, users are matched based on their current situational context, meaning the experiences that they get pulled into do not have to be planned. They're just based on the situation that you're in right now. And these experiences are collective, meaning that you will be actively engaging with another person or multiple people. Let's do an example of this to see how it actually works. So say that there are two users at two separate coffee shops. Ordinarily, they wouldn't be able to interact with each other. One, because they don't even, well, they're separated by distance. And two, they don't even know that the other person is at a coffee shop. However, the CE system can see that they're both in coffee shops and in similar situational contexts and match them up in an experience. So the two users receive a notification from the system saying you can participate in an experience. They go ahead and participate in the experience. Maybe the experience is taking photos of their coffee and adding captions to it and swapping them. And then they receive the results of each other's captions and photos. So what happened in this experience? One, we can see that there was no planning required. The system just automatically matched them based on their context. And two, the experience that they engaged in was very active with another person, and so it was more satisfying than, say, liking something on Facebook. That's what CE does. It creates interactions for other people, but this quarter we were thinking about how can we use these interactions to build something more, and specifically in our case, how can we use these interactions to form new friendships? More specifically in our case, how can we use CE to facilitate triadic closures? Why would we want CE to facilitate triadic closures? Say you're a user and you want to create new friendships. You want to expand your social network. It's difficult to trust strangers because you don't know them and you have to interact with them, but it's easier to trust a stranger who is already friends with a friend that you have. So in this specific example, you don't know somebody and a stranger doesn't know somebody, but you both have a friend in common. You can create a new friendship between the two strangers, and this is called triadic closure. How can we use CE to facilitate this triadic closure? Our conceptual approach to this problem is to create a progression of experiences that the two strangers go through. So in the beginning of the experiences with the two strangers, your mutual friend is your common basis of interaction, and all the participants have an equal role. In the intermediary experiences, the mutual friend has taken a back seat so that the two strangers can interact with each other more directly. And these experiences are less about knowing the other person and having fun. And by the time that these two strangers can get into regular CE experiences, they're not really strangers anymore. They have a relationship between the two of them. So in tackling this problem, we've done a couple of things this quarter. We did some need-finding interviews, we created some prototypes, we made some studies to test these prototypes in two forms, SMS messages and paper prototypes, and then we analyzed these studies to refine our design argument. Earlier in this quarter, we did some need-finding studies. We found users who recently had to make new friends because they were in an unfamiliar situation. So transfer students, exchange students, and new grads who moved somewhere. All people who were in an unfamiliar situation, didn't know anybody, and had to make new friends for social interactions. While interviewing these people, we targeted our interviews on the process of making friends via mutual friends. We also looked at other forms of digitally facilitated friendships, meaning friendships that were formed, like specifically friendships formed through gaming or pen pal apps, to see what benefits people got from friendships formed digitally at distance. So some user needs that we found in building new friendships. There was a need for a sense of reciprocity in the relationship. In one interview, somebody said, at the point of being invited to another activity by this person they just started to get to know, I felt like the friendship was reciprocated. There was a need for a structured activity to mitigate awkwardness in interactions. So in gaming, having the frame of the game and the role of what each person should do helped facilitate these interactions, so it was less awkward and more enjoyable and easier to get to know the other people. And there was a need of knowing information about the other person. During one of our studies, somebody said, I only know 2 things about Patrick, who was the other participant in the study. It would take months of tidbits of information before I would actually talk to him. So before being able to even talk to Patrick, much less have a friendship, this person needs to know more about Patrick. So we created a design argument for the progression of experiences. At the end of this experiences, the ideal outcome is that the user forms a new friendship from the person who was friends with their friend. Some obstacles to this is one, that the users don't trust strangers and don't want to interact with these strangers, and that these strangers don't have a common basis on which to even form a relationship. So our design is, as we noted before, this progression of experiences. And so why would each part of the progression work? In the introductory experiences, we have the mutual friend as the basis. So this would be the support that the 2 other strangers would know each other. We also have expressive qualities within these introductory experiences to fulfill the need of having to know each other. In the intermediary experiences, we diminish the role of the mutual friend because we don't want the mutual friend to be the only basis on which the 2 strangers know each other. By diminishing the role, we increase the synchrony between the other 2 users, meaning that they do the same things within the experience, and being more synchronous might facilitate more rapport. We also gamify these intermediary experiences to increase the enjoyment that both of the strangers get in these experiences. And hopefully that will have them participate in more experiences with each other, and the positive valence that they have in these experiences transfers into more likability of the other person. At the end of this progression, the 2 strangers should not be strangers anymore. They should have a relationship. They should be able to participate in the regular CE experiences. Okay, so how does this design argument manifest in the interface models for just the introductory experiences? We can do that first. So the system makes these experiences so that they're synchronous, meaning that all three participants, all three people in the triad have to be in the correct situational context so that they can even do the experience. Why did we design it that way? Well, by having synchronous experiences, we can get results much more quickly from the other three people. And getting results quickly means that it seems like the other two participants in the experience are responding directly to you as a user. By having these fast responses, the sense of reciprocity is maintained. You submit your caption or pictures during an experience, and you quickly get other people's captions and photos. So it seems like these people are responding directly to you. We also make sure in the notification to explicitly show the mutual friend connection, and this is so that you can trust the stranger more. By surfacing this link, you know that this person is not just a random stranger. This person is associated with somebody that you currently trust, and you're more open to having interactions with this person. So if you choose to participate in the experience, you can see that you would take a picture of your drink and have a caption about why you would order it. So you have a very structured framework. You know what to do, and so it's less awkward to be in this experience than if you were in a free-form experience and you could just say whatever you want. You might not know what to say. In this experience, you can take a photo and add a caption. And this expressive quality is important because through the expressiveness, you can learn more about the stranger and they can learn more about you. Okay, so in the end result, you would get a picture of what everybody ordered plus their own caption. And you can see that in this experience, everybody has an equal row. The mutual friend has an equal row to the two strangers. And so the equivalent roles, we think, create this basis of interaction. Everybody is equal and it's less awkward to interact with each other if you're all doing the same thing. Let's go through the interface model for one of the intermediate experiences. This one we call compound word. So for the same reasons, we have synchronous experiences because we want to maintain a sense of reciprocity, and we still maintain this mutual friend connection so that you are aware that this person is connected to you in some way. This experience differs from the previous one though by being gamified. This experience is less informative, but because it's gamified, we think that it's more enjoyable. So you can have a positive experience, like positive valence throughout the experience, and maybe this positive valence would contribute to you having higher affinity or liking the other person who is participating in the experience with you more. So you can also see in the compound word experience, you work together with the other stranger to create a picture of a compound word, and the mutual friend guesses this compound word. So the mutual friend has a differentiated role from the two strangers. We're doing this because we don't want the mutual friend to be the only thing holding these two strangers together, and so we're trying to phase them out of the experiences. The other two users are synced together. They're doing the same thing, taking two pictures, and having synchronous activities sometimes builds rapport between two people, and we're hoping in this case the synced activity will build that rapport and then increase their affinity towards each other and cause them to feel friendlier towards each other. Okay, so you can see that in the end screen. both of the two strangers have their pictures, and the mutual friend guessed it. And so you built this collaborative digital artifact from these two users. And like I was saying before, hopefully this digital artifact and the experience of building it together built the rapport to increase the sense of friendship between these two strangers. Yay!
So now we can run through the studies that we conducted this quarter. Our first study involved testing the paper prototype that we mentioned earlier. Our study had the following setup, where we had 2 separate rooms, and each room contained a researcher conducting the study, as well as a participant in that study. The participants were strangers, and the mutual friend was listed on the paper prototype as one of the researchers. The participants interacted with each paper prototype for 2 experiences, and their submission was sent to the other participant via the researcher. When a participant finished their submission, the researcher would exit the room, place the submission in the exchange area, and pick up the submission of the other participant, and place that submission on the next portion of the paper prototype. We conducted 2 rounds of paper prototype testing. The first round involved testing the bumped experience at a coffee shop, followed by the compound word experience we discussed earlier. The second round involved testing the coffee shop experience, followed by another bumped experience based on mood and weather. For this study, the primary mode of data collection was a Google survey that the participants filled out following each experience, as well as the free response portion, which involved the researchers directly asking the participants open-ended questions. We wanted to determine how participants felt about the experience in terms of emotion, valence or positiveness of emotion, as well as arousal or the energy associated with the emotion, as well as the interest in the experience as a whole and the comfort level throughout the experience. We also wanted to determine how participants felt towards the other participant or the stranger. We focused on likability, interest in learning more about the other participant, as well as willingness to engage with the other participant in real life. So here are our key findings for round 1 of the experience. Our first key finding was that the importance of clarity in what the user was supposed to submit. Our bumped response explicitly said, take a picture of your drink and say why you ordered it. One participant took this very literally and put as her caption that she got her drink because she got a discount. She reported feeling that she didn't give a good impression, as well as flustered, and this led us to think that the prompt we associate with each experience must be thought through very carefully in order to elicit creative and engaging responses. Another key finding is that one introductory experience is not sufficient, and we ought to put these triads through more experiences centered on freedom of expression. We had one participant express concerns about the disconnected nature of the experience given the lack of freedom of expression. To recap, the compound word experience that they're referencing is one in which each participant takes a picture of a light and the other one takes a picture of a house. And the other participant guesses the compound word that those pictures produces. Our participant thought that anyone participating in this experience would have put a picture of the same type of thing, and it was much less personal. So our takeaway from this is that it is important to put these triads through a greater volume of experiences based on freedom of expression, or experiences similar to the bumped coffee shop experience. So here are the results for round 2 of testing our paper prototype. If you'll recall, round 2 involved testing the bumped coffee shop experience and then a similar bumped experience where the user submits a picture of the weather in their area and describes how it makes them feel. Our key finding in this experience is a decrease in likability and interest across all questions that we asked. If you'll take a look at this diagram, you'll see that there's questions listed on the left that we asked in each of our surveys following each experience. The average score is shown on a scale of 0 to 4, where 0 is where the participant experienced least interest, and 4 is most interest. So you'll see here that, for example, for the first question, which is how likely is it that you would respond to the other participant's Instagram or Snapchat story if you saw something interesting, you can see that after the first experience, we had an average of 2.25, and that decreased to 1.5. We see similar decreases across all other questions, including meeting the other participant in real life for coffee, likelihood in terms of meeting the other participant for dinner, as well as how likely they are to interested they are in learning more about the other participant. 2 hypotheses we have for this is that it's a possible experience misfire. It may be indicative that we need to rethink the efficacy of the weather-based experience, and that it was not as interesting or engaging as the coffee-based experience. Another possibility is that this might be a user misfire. The users that we conducted this test on all mentioned that they were introverts and who were averse to using social media. It's a possibility that the more they engaged with CE, the less comfortable they felt and the less willing they were to engage with the other participant. The second study we conducted was the SMS prototype-based study. This study was a more long-term one over the course of several weeks in order to get closer to the operating procedure of Cerebro. The friendships of participants were mapped out to determine appropriate triads with the researcher acting as the mutual friend. The participants were told to text the researcher when they were in a coffee shop or outside, and the researcher would text each participant through a third-party number, the experience prompt, and then an artifact was sent to all participants once the experience was completed. The experiences tested in this prototype were the coffee shop-based experience, in this study rather, was the coffee shop bump experience as well as the weather-based experience. So the measures that we tested in this study were similar to the ones in the paper prototype. We used a Google survey to record our data for this experience, as well as the measures we focused on were determining on how participants felt about the experience in terms of their emotions, comfort level, and interest in the experience as a whole. How participants feel towards the other participant was another measure we looked at, which we interpreted in terms of likability and interest in the stranger, as well as willingness to engage with the other participant in real life. So the first key finding that we had for this experience is the importance of synchrony and not leaving participants hanging. We had a scenario where one participant was left hanging for almost 24 hours, and the experience was not completed until the following day. We can see that there's a dramatic decrease in likability and interest in the other person across all questions that we asked. So for the person, you'll see that we asked how likely is it that you would meet the other participant in real life for coffee. Synchronous responses had an average of 3, whereas asynchronous responses had an average of 0. We see that drop off in meeting the other participant for drinks, as well as even in terms of likability, and in terms of interest in participating in a digital experience similar to this one in the future. So the takeaway from this is to decrease or eliminate completely the level of asynchronous that we have after each experience. Another key finding we have from the SMS study is that extroverts respond better to these experiences and are a good target audience. This is similar to the finding we had in round 2 of the paper prototype, where we tested on primarily introverts. Now, if you look here, we have divided the responses to our questions in terms of extroverts responses versus introvert responses. And you'll see that introverts are much less willing to meet the participant in real life for coffee, meet the other participant for drinks. They're a little less likely to think that the other participant is a likable person, and they're slightly less likely to engage in an experience like this in the future. Another key finding from our SMS-based experience is enthusiasm based around context-aware experiences as a proxy for building relationships based on interests. This is based on a quote from one of our users that said that they enjoyed the aspect of using common experiences as a draw for building relationships, and they would love to see this in other interest-based locations such as libraries, bookstores, specialty stores, hobby shops, etc., to capitalize on the power of shared interest. This also acts as a potential explanation for the lack of enthusiasm following the Sky-based experience in round 2 of the paper prototype, where we saw a drop-off in the second experience. For our status update, this involved mapping out the social relations of members of DTR by having everyone fill out a survey. We divided the participants into 3 groups, a group of mutual friends and 2 stranger groups, and there was 1 researcher for each group and 3 in total. And we ran both participants through gamified experiences, including Compound Word and I Spy. To clarify, the Compound Word experience involved 2 users submitting pictures and the mutual friend guessing the word. And the I Spy experience involved showing the user a picture of one of those I Spy games that we played when we were younger, and then asking the other 2 participants to find the location of each of 3 objects that the mutual friend would list. And the user would submit that by circling around these images and submitting it, and the mutual friend would determine whether or not that submission was correct. We had similar measures and study objectives to the paper prototype study as well as the SMS-based study. Our data collection method was a Google survey, including a free response discussion at the end of each experience. We wanted to determine how participants felt during the sequence of experiences, including emotions in terms of valence versus arousal, comfort level, and interest in the experience as a whole. We also wanted to learn how the strangers felt towards each other, in terms of interest in them, as well as willingness to engage with the other participant in real life. Something that we were able to gauge in this study that we were not able to gauge in previous studies was how the mutual friend felt. We weren't able to engage in other tests since the researchers acted as a mutual friend, so this was an interesting measure to test in this study. Here are our key findings from the status update-based study. We found that users wanted more complex experiences. We see two quotes here where one person said that the word lighthouse seems really easy, and they thought it would be more fun if it were harder. We also see that users want greater control over the experience. Users enjoy the I Spy experience because you can choose how complex to make it. You can choose which objects in the image you want the other participants to find. In the former, there was less control, and the system gave you a word that the other participants had to come up with. The lack of control in the previous experience made it less interesting, and more control in I Spy made it a lot more interesting. We also found that mutual friends enjoys this experience a lot, despite being the ones not directly participating in the competition. For I Spy, they found it very enjoyable, and they even found their role in the Combat War experience enjoyable as well. So here's a discussion of our findings as a whole. We found that our initial assumptions of a single bump experience as a sort of foundation for friendship is questionable. This means that we will be adding experiences with the same characteristics as bump 3, including freedom of expression and using the user context as a proxy for connecting users around similar interests based around similar locations. We also found that the personality of users can limit the effectiveness of trying to close triads. We found that there is higher effectiveness of our approach for extroverts, and there's low effectiveness when it comes to users who describe themselves as introverts and are averse to using social media to connect. We also found that users enjoy experiences with greater freedom and user control. This will influence how we iterate on and implement future gamified experiences as well as the Bump 3 experiences. We also found that we want to eliminate or greatly reduce asynchrony, or having participants waiting for an experience to complete. This is a trade-off we need to consider: the likelihood of an experience occurring versus risks associated with synchrony. Since if we make an experience asynchronous, it's much more likely that people are, for example, going to be at coffee shops throughout the day rather than a coffee shop at the same time. Technical approach, we'll cover our work done so far. We've created a coffee-based bump experience built out with the capability of adding similar experiences. And now we'll head to a technical demonstration of what we've done so far. So we can now run through a technical demonstration of the experience that we've built so far. So right now we have CE all booted up and ready to go. And we can simulate locations in order to put all users at a coffee shop to simulate the bumped coffee shop experience that we have. So once we run this in the CE platform, we see that all users are now in coffee. We can use this to determine which, we can use the debugging log here to see which users have been put into this experience. And we can update that accordingly. Or look at these experiences rather. So we see that the group bump experience here has been triggered. We can go ahead and see which users have been put into that. So we see that users Josh has bumped into Garrett and Josh's brother, and Garrett's brother rather. So we can go ahead and submit a picture of coffee. And we can put a caption like, "Just simple black coffee to start the day." As we submit, we can see that this has been put into the experience, and the user can see the sort of results so far. If we turn it into mobile, we can see that there's a better way of doing it where the user can now wait for the experience to complete. So if we sign up, and we sign up as another user, let's say we go as Garrett. And Garrett's also going to participate in this group bump experience. And he can submit a picture of his latte, and he'll say, #LatteLife. Capital host lattes in E-Town. #sorry, not sorry. And when he hits submit, he'll see the partially completed experience with his submission at top and Josh's submission in the second one, and we're still waiting on the submission from Garrett's brother. So Garrett's brother can go ahead and submit the experience. Submit his submission, rather. And here's a picture of Red Eye Coffee. He'll say, "Burning the midnight oil tonight, so I need something to keep me up." And once he hits submit, you'll see the completed experience with all submissions in this sort of collage-based format. The next step for our project involves adding more Bump 3-like experiences that we discussed earlier. And then our next step for testing involved testing on the actual CE platform, and using that to determine how many experiences are necessary to move users onto intermediary experiences, including gamified experiences, as well as the standard experiences in CE. This would likely be done by putting users through a series of experiences and asking questions related to likability and whatnot throughout, and just seeing how close they can get after a set number of experiences. We also want to iterate on the gamified intermediary experiences to make them more difficult and to give users more control. After we design these experiences, we can test them using low-fidelity methods, such as paper prototyping or the SMS-based method, and then we can build these gamified experiences into CE and test them in a proper setting. Lastly, we want to modify the backend to keep track of how many experiences users have had with each other. We want to do this so the system will know when to move strangers onto gamified and normal CE experiences, since our initial round of testing will likely be hard coding these static affordances into the experience into the code in order to make basically to purposely have these users be given this experience so they can participate in them. So in terms of our takeaways, our work this quarter has been working towards adding a new dimension to CE, one based on building new experiences through mutual friends. And we essentially want to create a new method of making friends. According to Psychology Today survey, making friends through mutual friends is the most common and preferred method of friendship building. And according to a Pew Research poll, people are increasingly making friends online, including younger teenagers. So our direction is what we see as a combination of these two. We're attempting to make the most natural way of friendship creation more ubiquitous by moving it to an online medium.
And that concludes our presentation.